Hey, cool that you figured out that torpedoes aren't working right. How'd you manage to do that? You fired a whole load of them at your own ship, and they didn't sink it. Oh, how? I see. You couldn't have fired them at the enemy? Uh-huh. So you mistook an 11,000-ton British cruiser for a 50,000-ton German battleship. Yeah. Well, with friends like you, who needs enemies, huh? Okay. Bye. HMS Hood lies at the bottom of the North Atlantic, vanquished in just 17 minutes by the German battleship Bismarck. The German behemoth is steaming away, but the British are in hot pursuit with only one goal in mind: revenge. But how? Will there be another epic duel of big guns on the high seas? Not yet. First, it's time to unleash the Swordfish. I'm Indy Neidell. This is a World War II in real-time miniseries. Last week, we saw the Royal Navy's most famous ship, the battlecruiser HMS Hood, supported by battleship Prince of Wales, head into battle against the German battleship Bismarck and heavy cruiser Prince Eugen in the early hours of May 24th, 1941. That battle quickly turned into disaster for the Royal Navy when Bismarck obliterated Hood with a single shell, killing over 1,400 men in a catastrophic explosion. On board Prince of Wales, Captain John Leach struggled to fight on and did score a few hits on Bismarck, but his damaged battleship was outgunned and he ordered a retreat. We rejoined the action about 10 minutes after the sinking of Hood. The German crews celebrate their victory, but on Bismarck's bridge, a debate breaks out between captain of the Bismarck, Ernst Lindemann, and commander of the task force, Gunther Lutyens. Lindemann wants to hunt down the wounded Prince of Wales, but Lutyens has no interest in going after the enemy. The clash between the two senior German officers reflected their separate and distinct command functions. Captain Lindemann, as commander of a single warship, operated first and foremost at the tactical level. For him, there was no question but that the immediate objective was to destroy the crippled Prince of Wales. Admiral Lutyens, in his dual capacity as fleet chief and task force commander, operated at the strategic and operational levels. His orders were clear up to a point. The primary mission was to operate in the Atlantic against enemy convoys. Grand Admiral Raeder had admonished his fleet chief not to risk a major engagement for limited and perhaps uncertain goals. Lutyens dismisses Lindemann's suggestion, and by 8 a.m., he has even decided to call off the convoy raiding mission, Operation Rheinübung, entirely. He does this without consulting either Lindemann or Prince Eugen's captain, Helmut Brinkmann. His thinking is first that he has irreversibly lost the element of surprise. Since the battle, the cruisers Norfolk and Suffolk have continued to shadow Bismarck, staying behind at a safe range and using their radar. By now, Prince of Wales has joined them, and her crew are working to patch up the damage and get the big guns back in order. Also, the damage that Bismarck sustained is worse than first thought. One of Prince of Wales' shells hit below the waterline, and Bismarck has taken on 4,000 tons of water from flooding and counterflooding. Lutyens has given the order to reduce speed to a maximum of 28 knots. Furthermore, the damage has worsened the already unfavorable fuel situation. Something like 1,000 tons of fuel is in forward storage tanks, now inaccessible because of the flooding. Lutyens decides to head to Saint-Nazaire in France, where there is a dry dock large enough to accommodate Bismarck for repairs. He thinks returning to Norway is too risky. Traveling south of Iceland would expose him to the greatest concentration of British air and naval forces, and he's reluctant to return through the Denmark Strait because the narrowness of the channel and the presence of mines would make it harder than ever to escape the British radar. Going to Saint-Nazaire would also leave him well placed to sail back out into the Atlantic and resume the operation, possibly with the battleship Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, which are in port for repairs at Brest. So for now, he continues on a heading of 180 degrees due south, shadowed by Norfolk, Suffolk, and Prince of Wales. But as Lutyens makes his plans, the full strength of the Royal Navy is being sent to hunt him down. At 9 a.m., the Admiralty announces the loss of the battlecruiser with a somber statement, which admits that there will be few survivors, but declares that the pursuit of the enemy continues. In the following hours, First Sea Lord Sir Dudley Pound throws as many ships as he can into the hunt for Bismarck. The light cruisers Manchester, Birmingham, and Arethusa on patrol between Iceland and the Faroes are ordered to take up new positions in the Denmark Strait, in case Bismarck or Prince Eugen try to head back that way. Battleship Rodney is dispatched from escorting RMS Britannic to the U.S. Rodney is badly in need of a planned refit at the Boston Navy Yard, but she's sent anyway. With Rodney go destroyers Somali, Tartar, and Mashona. Battleship Ramillies, 900 nautical miles to the south of Bismarck, is ordered to leave its convoy and take a position west of Bismarck, while Battleship Revenge is sent from Halifax. The cruisers Edinburgh and Gloucester on Atlantic patrol are also ordered in. Meanwhile, commander of the Home Fleet, Vice Admiral John Tovey's task force continues sailing towards Bismarck, as we saw last time. This is Battleship King George V, Battlecruiser Repulse, Aircraft Carrier Victorious, and light cruisers Galatia, Aurora, Kenya, and Neptune. On top of that, Vice Admiral James Somerville's Force H, based at Gibraltar, is placed on high alert. He has the carrier Ark Royal, Battlecruiser Renown, and light cruiser Sheffield set to sail and intercept Bismarck. As the evening of the 24th draws in, the British make their first attacks on the Bismarck. Before this, though, Lutyens releases Prince Eugen to go off and raid convoys alone. At 6:40 p.m., covered by a bank of fog, he makes a sharp 180-degree turn, emerging from the haze just 9 miles from Suffolk. Bismarck opens fire on the British cruiser and forces her to briefly retreat. As Prince of Wales and Norfolk return fire from 11 nautical miles away, it looks like a full battle is about to start, but Lutyens is just creating a diversion, which Prince Eugen's Captain Helmut Brinkmann uses to increase speed and escape the range of the British radar. After this, the chase resumes its previous format, with the cruisers and Prince of Wales shadowing Bismarck. Lutyens hopes that he will soon be able to lure the British ships into the path of a U-boat pack in the mid-Atlantic. Before that can happen, though, the carrier Victorious comes into striking range, and at 10 past 10, she launches her force of 9 Swordfish torpedo bombers. The Swordfish biplanes are basically obsolete, and their crews are inexperienced, but when they sight Bismarck around 10:30 p.m., they attack with determination, dropping down to below 30 meters above the water to deploy their torpedoes, while they are under fire from an incredible array of anti-aircraft weaponry, including 16 4-inch guns, 16 1.5-inch guns, and 20 3/4-inch light flat guns. The volume of fire is so great, the guns glow red hot, and Bismarck's crew use fire hoses to cool them down. Even the big guns join in on the action, though. Schneider ordered the great 15-inch guns, as well as the secondary armament 6-inch barrels, to their lowest possible elevation, and fired round after round into the ocean ahead of the approaching aircraft. Giant columns of water rose ahead of the Bismarck as the shells splashed into the sea. Flying into one of those columns would mean instant destruction. Captain Lindemann desperately yells, "Hard a port, hard a starboard," as he throws Bismarck into a series of violent zigzags to avoid the incoming torpedoes. Just one Swordfish actually hits the target, killing a German sailor, but doing little damage to Bismarck itself. Bismarck sails on. In the early hours of May 25th, the crew reduces speed and begins patching up damage, before wishing Lutyens a happy 52nd birthday. Things seem even brighter at about 3 a.m. when Bismarck manages to finally lose the British cruisers. Lutyens takes advantage of the fact that they have started to make zigzag evasive maneuvers as they approach the area of possible U-boat operations. He waits until Suffolk veers southeast, at which point he increases Bismarck's speed and makes a sharp turn starboard, increasing separation rapidly and pulling himself out of radar range. Then, as the British ships fan out to the southwest to search for him, Lutyens changes course again, looping round to the northwest before crossing some 20 miles behind them. By the time he resumes a southeasterly heading, Bismarck is far beyond British detection and steaming towards the French coast. This also means that Admiral Tovey's interception force is clueless as to Bismarck's location. At 8 a.m., Tovey was approaching the area where he expected to have intercepted the Bismarck. But by that time, the German battleship was 150 miles away to the northeast, crossing Tovey's track at right angles. At dawn, Victorious launched its Swordfish again, conducting an unsuccessful aerial search of the area to the northwest of Wake Walker's cruisers. It seemed as if the Bismarck had vanished into thin air. Worse, it would be almost 24 hours before the British had any firm news of her. It was an extremely tense period, and while Tovey and his superiors in the Admiralty tried to guess where Lutyens might be heading, warships and search aircraft combed the North Atlantic, searching for the elusive battleship. I won't go into a huge amount of detail about this search, but it really is a frantic time. Bismarck is out there, somewhere in the vast expanse of the ocean, and the British have no real idea where she is or what she's up to. Their biggest fear is that Bismarck is undamaged, and that she manages to rendezvous with a German tanker, increasing her range and freeing her to prey on the 7 Allied convoys now at sea in the North Atlantic. On the British side, fuel is becoming a real issue too. At noon on May 25th, Wake Walker's cruisers head back to Iceland. Victorious returns to Scapa Flow in the early afternoon, Repulse heads to Newfoundland shortly afterwards, and Prince of Wales goes back to Iceland at nightfall. Fortunately, the British have a stroke of luck, and they have Lutyens to thank for it. See, since the very start of the mission, the German commander has been very liberal when it comes to sending radio message. Prince Eugen's Captain Helmut Brinkmann has already noted his worries about this in his diary, commenting that a skilled intelligence service can get valuable information even from fragments of radio signals. The British managed to triangulate some of the messages that Lutyens sent after breaking away from the cruisers. This gives them a better idea of where Bismarck might be heading, and Tovey turns his ships around to head east. The hunt for the Bismarck had now become a pursuit, with both the Home Fleet and Force H heading towards the same approximate point, some 250 miles to the southwest of Ireland. It also meant, for the very first time, Tovey knew roughly where to look. Finally, on the morning of the 26th, the British get eyes on Bismarck again when a Coastal Command Catalina flying boat out of North Ireland spots the ship about 10 past 10 in the morning. As Bismarck's AA shells burst around him and shrapnel dents and tears at his plane, Flying Officer Dennis Briggs scribbles off a message and hands it to his wireless officer. 1 battleship, course 150 degrees. My position, 49 degrees 33 minutes north, 21 degrees 47 minutes west. Bismarck is about 800 nautical miles northwest of Brest, heading southwest and traveling at 20 knots. King George V is 135 miles away and Rodney 125, and even with Bismarck's speed reduced, they will not be able to catch her. Only Somerville's Force H can intercept. By the time the news reaches him at noon, Somerville's force is actually north of Bismarck, so he turns to heading 120 and steers a parallel course about 120 nautical miles away from the enemy. He wastes no time in launching his attack. Somerville has his flag on the battlecruiser Renown, but the Admiralty are reluctant to let him engage Bismarck after the loss of Hood, which was actually once flagship of Force H. That means it is time to send the Swordfish into battle once again. At 3 that afternoon, Ark Royal launches her first attack with 15 planes. They soon spot their target. Dropping low, they begin their attack run and launch their torpedoes. Strangely, there doesn't seem to be any fire coming their way. No anti-aircraft fire. You see, Somerville has ordered the cruiser HMS Sheffield to move closer to Bismarck to track her on radar. But no one seems to have told the Swordfish commanders about this. On board Sheffield, the ship's company watches in horror as friendly torpedoes streak towards them. A cool customer on the outside, Captain Larcom, was sorely tempted to order his anti-aircraft gunners to open fire, but the immediate job was to save the Sheffield. He tensed and waited for the torpedoes to hit the water, ready to bark out orders to the coxswain to turn this way and that, to comb the tracks and avoid the deadly fish. Then a miracle. One by one, all the torpedoes, except 1 or 2, exploded within a minute of hitting the water. The Sheffield easily avoided the rest. It's heart-in-the-mouth moment, but really, it's quite fortunate that this incident takes place. It turns out the magnetic detectors on the torpedoes have failed. So, when the Swordfish return to Ark Royal at 5:20 p.m. to rearm and refuel, the faulty detonators are replaced with simpler contact mechanisms. At 7:10 p.m., the pilots take off for a second run. This time they have more luck. For starters, they attack the correct target, spotting Bismarck about 8:40 and attacking in 3 waves from all angles. They manage to score 3 hits. The first 2 inflict little or no damage, but the third strikes Bismarck's stern and rocks the German ship so badly, some German sailors fear they will capsize. Bismarck rights herself, but the damage she has sustained is serious. The first damage control team informed Captain Lindemann that the hole blasted in the Bismarck's hull by the torpedo was so large that all the steering rooms were flooded and had to be evacuated. Seamen near the armored hatch over the steering mechanism gazed down onto the open sea. Seaman Herzog returned to his station. He recalled the sheer terror of the next few announcements over the ship's loudspeakers. Rudder system fouled. Rudder jammed. Yep. The tiny Swordfish have jammed Bismarck's double rudders at 12 degrees to port. Sheffield reports that the out-of-control battleship is turning wide circles in the middle of the Atlantic. For the next hour or so, Lindemann works desperately to fix his battleship. He tries to balance the rudder by varying the power of the port, center, and starboard engines, but no combination of full ahead, half ahead, or astern seems to make a difference. As soon as Bismarck reaches any real speed, the massive twin rudder bites into the sea and begins turning the ship. The damage control crew consider sending divers down into the flooded engine compartment to cut away or to blow off the rudders, but these plans are abandoned as the seas are too rough. Still, by about 10 p.m., Lindemann has got the battleship sailing in a straight line. But speed is down to just 7 knots, and he's had to adjust course into the wind to the northwest, which is the complete opposite direction to where they actually want to go. Lutyens remains on the bridge. He has turned over all possible outcomes in his head, and although the British will most likely wait until dawn, he figures this is the end for him and his ship. There is no possibility of aid from other vessels. Scharnhorst and Gneisenau at Brest aren't seaworthy, and any and all destroyers and U-boats out there are struggling in the heavy winds and choppy seas. The weight of history sits heavy on the commander. A veteran of World War I, Lutyens was too painfully aware of the high sea fleet's inglorious rebellion in 1917, revolution in 1918, and scuttling in 1919. And then there was December 1939, when Captain Hans Langsdorff had scuttled the Graf Spee off the River Platte rather than sortie against 3 British cruisers. For the stiff, duty-bound Lutyens, there could be no talk of scuttling or of surrendering his ship. If 2,220 officers and men had to be sacrificed, then that was the price the task force commander was willing to pay. With his mind set, Lutyens prepares for his final battle. He informs the Kriegsmarine of his intentions. We will fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer. We shall see how this story continues when we return next week. Once that's released, you should be able to click here to watch it. So if you're watching this in the future, it's easy to continue. And for more awesome series like this one, join the TimeGhost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com so we can keep doing them. That is who is responsible for our productions. The TimeGhost Army Bismarck Buddy of the Week is Julia Wheeler, and these are the newest commissioned officers. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.